You're listening to The Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things with Lyndia Grant.
Well, good evening, Radio 1 listeners. Welcome to The Lyndia Grant Show. Today we've got another exciting guest for you. It is September the 29th, Friday, 2023, and we've got as our special guest, Ms. Isasara Day. She's here to talk about the March on Washington Film Festival. Welcome to today's show, Ms. Isasara.
I'm so happy to be here, Ms. Grant.
Well, I am happy to have you here. I'm excited about what we're going to be talking about. But we're going to go first to talk to Dr. Julianne Malvo. She's our weekly commentator. Talks about politics and the economy. Just let me give a little background on Dr. Malvo. She is a nationally known economist, a former dean of the New College of Ethnic Studies at California State University, Los Angeles. She's one of two president emeritus at Bennett College in my home state of North Carolina, Raleigh. She earned her PhD in economics. She's a world traveler and speaker, president of Push Excel, the youth organization founded by Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson out of Chicago, Illinois. Hello to you, Dr. Julianne. Welcome to today's show. We appreciate you so much. What you got good for us today?
Hey, Lyndia. Hope you're doing well. There's so much to talk about. I don't even know where to start. But perhaps I'll start with the looming possibility of a government shutdown. As of right now, there's going to be a shutdown. There seems to be no coming together. The Republican Party is in a shambles with the far right, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz, almost insisting on a government shutdown. There are moderate Republicans who don't want to go in that direction, and not even moderate Republicans. Many of them don't want to go in that direction, but they're afraid of the far right, and so they basically have held their powder. Kevin McCarthy has been a poor leader. He can't seem to get his folks together, and so we are looking between, well, should there be a shutdown? Should there not be a shutdown? And of course, there shouldn't be a shutdown. Government workers, many of them do not make a lot of money, and so who can go without a paycheck even for 1 week if you're expecting that money weekly? The next check will be coming toward the beginning of the month, which is usually your rent is due, other things are due, so there will be significant hardship. And the hardship will fall disproportionately on African Americans. 18% of all federal workers are African American workers, but they don't seem to be able to get it together. The Senate has submitted a bill that would keep government operating, but Kevin McCarthy says he won't even take it to the House floor. If he took it to the House floor, we get some sense of who supports this and who doesn't. But he's refusing. He is between a rock and a hard place. If he chooses to work with Democrats, as he should, only one Republican can basically give a no-confidence vote for him as Speaker, and then they'll have to go get another Speaker. But now it took 15 votes to get McCarthy. Who can they get? I don't think anybody would vote for Marjorie Taylor Greene or Matt Gaetz. So who will they get? It's an interesting question, but it's more than interesting. It's cataclysmic. But we won't know whether or not there's going to be a shutdown, but everyone I know says at this point it's very, very, very likely, and of course we know who suffers. Now, United Auto Workers strike is continuing, and there has been very little progress. There's progress with Ford, but not with the other two of the big three auto companies. I'm not sure. The auto workers have demanded a 40% increase over four years. The auto companies have responded with a 20% increase over 4.5 years. There's been very little movement on that. There's been significant movement with Ford on other things. They restored pensions, the health plan, removed the two-tier work pay system, but the other two have not made that kind of progress. So the thought is that by Friday they will have another round of companies shut down, walked out on. that's the thought. There's the interesting movement. President Biden walked with the union on Tuesday. He put on a red shirt and he walked and he told them that they deserved everything that they were asking for, that auto companies have made enormous profits and they deserve to share in that. He's gotten great reviews from that, but the UAW still has not endorsed him for president. Meanwhile, the previous president went to a non-union plant and talked about how if electronic vehicles were implemented, they would possibly wipe out all of the auto companies' jobs, auto worker jobs. He's right in the sense that EVs have a much less complicated way of manufacturing than traditional autos do. However, that's why the union is negotiating. The collective bargaining process is also about protecting jobs. Now, I don't know if you saw that food fight. That's what I call the food fight, or the unsupervised kindergarten of the Republican debate. It was horrible. They spoke over each other. The moderators had no control over them. There were a few sections where there was relatively calm conversation, but there was a whole lot of shouting over each other, a whole lot of attacks, and a whole lot of foolishness. Chris Christie, for example, said that Biden was sleeping with a member of the teachers union, so he couldn't be trusted to deal with a number of things. Well, that's a low blow. Dr. Jill Biden is a well-known community college educator, and that's his wife. And I think Mike Pence tried to put some levity there to say, well, I sleep with a teacher too, because his wife also has been a teacher. But we don't need to know who's sleeping with who. We need to know what kind of public policy we're going to have in terms of education. Of course, they talked about charter schools, local control, critical race theory. That was Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis was interesting in that he attempted to attack Trump and attempted to assert himself. He was the one who's got the most speaking time, so he was much more aggressive than he was in a previous debate. But aggressive and good sense are two different things. Nikki Haley, of course, again, distinguished herself at some level as probably the most feisty on the stage, not only the only woman, but also she pushed back a lot. And to me, a low blow was between she and Tim Scott. She, of course, appointed Tim Scott to be a congressman from South Carolina, and he sent it to the Senate. But they got into it, and it was really ugly. They're both South Carolinians, and I just don't know what to say about that, except for the fact that it just was kind of ugly. In any case, I don't think anybody won. I think the American people lost. Of course, the missing person, the missing link was the previous president, who Chris Christie said called a coward. Chris Christie was after the previous president, called him a coward, said a bunch of other things. Others called him a coward as well, decried the fact that he was not on the stage. But what's funny, he said no one would call him Donald Trump. They would call him Dr. Donald Duck, because he was ducking the debate. And that was kind of a funny line, but Trump wasn't there. He was someplace else. He thought the whole debate was beneath him. I thought it was beneath all of us to see all that squabbling on the stage. New Jersey Senator Robert Menendez is turned himself into court and is out on a $100,000 personal bond. His wife a $250,000 personal bond. Of course, they're accused of bribery, fraud, all kinds of things, and they've, of course, pled not guilty. Menendez, although more than half of his colleagues in the Senate have asked him to step down, he says he won't. He will not step down. He is not guilty, and he's prepared to defend himself. Okay. Now, we have enough stuff going on, really, with all of the shutdown, UAW. But, the Senate took the time on Wednesday to impose a dress code. They said that the men must wear slacks, coat, and tie. This is a direct hit on Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman, who comes to work in shorts and hoodies and whatever. He's a casual dresser. But by bipartisan and unanimous support, Joe Manchin and, of course, Mitt Romney got together and wrote some legislation, and by unanimous consent, they have a new dress code. So Fetterman says he will wear tie if he has to. What's interesting in all of this, Lydia, is the fact that they don't deal with women's dress. And, of course, the rule for women has evolved over time as we've gotten women into the Senate. At one point, women couldn't wear pantsuits. So they changed that. So they very wisely decided not to tackle the issue of women's dress, but it's, at the same time, it lets you know that this was a direct hit on John Fetterman. It had nothing to do with anyone else. Are we headed for a recession? That's a question that everyone is asking. And one economist, Paul Krugman, New York Times Paul Krugman, who happened to be my MIT classmate, and an opinion writer in the Times went back and forth, actually Thursday Times, to talk about whether or not a recession is inevitable. What we do know is that the interest rates have been rising, but we may get a pause, and inflation has been falling. What does that mean about a recession? Well, there always will be recessions, but is there going to be one in the next year? We hope not, and Krugman doesn't think so, and neither do I. That's good news for Joe Biden. Biden deserves and needs some good news, so there we have it. That's it for me today, Lyndia.
All right. Thank you, Dr. J, and we'll talk to you again next week. And now for our commercial break. We'll be back in a moment.
If it wasn't for my care coach at AmeriHealth, I probably wouldn't be so healthy right now. As a man, we don't get checkups or see a doctor regularly anyways. It's probably just a man thing because none of my partners go either. We know we should, but we just don't, and hope it works out.
So what changed for you?
AmeriHealth assigned me a care coach, somebody that gives one-on-one help, answer questions, explain things, and help set my appointments. She also helped me understand what having high blood pressure really means and ways to manage it so it doesn't kill me. It ain't nothing to play with. If you're a member of AmeriHealth, ask for a care coach. I'm glad I got mine.
At AmeriHealth, if you need a care coach, you can have one. Just call us at 1-877-759-6224 to get connected. 1-877-759-6224. This program is funded in part by the government of the District of Columbia Department of Healthcare Finance. Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Washington and former religion columnist Lyndia Grant.
Who Moved My Cheese is a book about two types of people, those who accept change quickly and move on, and those who hem and haw and try to figure things out. They didn't see change coming and waste valuable time trying to figure out what happened. How did this happen to me? Let's call this group procrastinators. The lesson inside the cheese story is simple. Life is change. Gerther said it best when he said, if I accept you as you are, I will make you worse. However, if I treat you as though you are what you're capable of becoming, I help you become that. We must change and keep moving. The Bible tells us to seek and you shall find, knock and the door will be open unto you, ask and it shall be given.
Read more in the religion column of the Washington Informer, an award-winning African-American newspaper. We don't report crime or gossip, just positive news. Pick up the Washington Informer or visit us online at WashingtonInformer.com. Call 202-561-4100 for more information.
This is Frank Smith with the African American Civil War Museum in Washington, D.C., located at 1925 Vermont Avenue Northwest on the Green Line. Did you know that a recent study found that children who visit museums do better in school and in life than children who do not? So parents, teachers, and preachers, let's get moving. I promise you, if you bring your children to the African American Civil War Museum, they will be inspired by the images that they see. They will be impressed by our living history reenactors who are always available, and they will be involved in our scavenger hunt that takes them throughout our exhibit. That's the African American Civil War Museum, 1925 Vermont Avenue. Our hours are 10 to 6:30 on weekdays, 12 to 4 on Saturdays and Sundays. See it, be inspired.
And we are back. Now we're going to talk to our second guest. I'm so excited to talk to her. Her name is Isosara Bay. She has served as the artistic director of the March on Washington Film Festival right here in Washington, D.C. since 2014. Bay served on the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation Board, and she organized the first Congressional Tri-Caucus Retreat of Black, Hispanic, and Asian and Pacific Islander members of Congress. Isosara, can you talk about the mission of the March on Washington Film Festival?
I am happy to. Thank you for having me. The March on Washington Film Festival's aim is to unearth the mistold, untold, and silenced stories of the well-known icons and the unknown foot soldiers of the civil rights movement, particularly from the mid-50s to the late 60s. We like to tie their strategies and actions to contemporary activism, and we like to do that here and abroad. So that's our mission.
Okay. How did you land on this year's theme of pulpits, protests, and power, the church and the civil rights movement?
Our founder, Robert Rabin, has traditionally taken Representative John Lewis's annual pilgrimage to historic civil rights sites in the South. Mm-hmm. And he went again this past year. But earlier, he was on that tour and met an older woman in a church, and they were talking. She was talking about the movement, and it occurred to him that there were so many stories of people we don't know who were part of the legion of folks who helped to move the movement forward. Mm-hmm. And so this year, we wanted to touch on the fact that many of the early organizers of the movement were not just activists, they were ministers, and some also became politicians. So since the theme of nonviolence and the SCLC were prime movers of the civil rights movement, we wanted to know, where is the church now with the civil rights movement? So that was the emphasis of our theme.
Okay, I like that. You're on the right station for this. You know, WYCB is the oldest gospel station in the country.
I didn't know.
It's the first contemporary gospel station as well. So we've been on for 40 years, and most of the churches listen to it, and my show is pretty popular with them. So I'm glad you're on here.
Excellent.
Tell me, what is one of your favorite untold or mistold stories that this year's festival uncovers?
Well, I have so many over the years. It's been such a privilege to invite some of the people I'd read about in history books to our festival. And so one of them is a woman named Sarah Collins Rudolph. And Sarah was one of the 5 young girls who were in the 16th Street Baptist Church basement. There were 5. 4 were killed. She survived. Her younger sister also died. Mm-hmm. So over the years, she came to speak with us about the effects of that event on her and her family. She's a grown woman now, and she pointed out to us that although there have been compensation funds from the government for other victims of domestic terrorism, like 9/11 Fund, for example, there has never been any kind of help given to survivors of racist terrorism here in this country, of which that 16th Street bombing is an example. And so she and many of the survivors who were not in the basement, who were upstairs, have never received any kind of medical assistance, mental health assistance. And so that is something that she brought forward then. This was a few years ago. And just a month or so ago in the papers, there was an article about how there is a move now to create a fund to give restitution to victims of domestic terror. And so that, for me, was one of our untold stories that has come full circle.
Well, you know, Dr. Julianne Malveaux is a great leader in reparations. So it is so true. It's like whatever happened to black folks, you know what, Ira Savi, I think about the same thing. Because, you know, if you're in a school like me, I'm a teacher, and when things happen at home, they want to get help for the child, don't they? They want a therapist. They want a psychologist. They want to make sure the child is okay. But look at all the things that happened to the slaves here in the United States. But that's another subject. I just wanted to say how I can understand and empathize with the young lady that was the last one left. Let me go to my next question.
Sure.
This year's festival has included multi-faith programming a screening of a film that explores the relationship between the Jewish community and Black Americans during the 1960s civil rights movement, a virtual conversation with scholars about Malcolm X. Can you talk about the importance of shining a light on other faith traditions?
It's absolutely important, and it doesn't take away at all from the role that the Christian faith has had in being an impetus to the civil rights movement. However, in the 20th century, from the early 1900s until the death of Malcolm X and even beyond, there have been African Americans who have been followers of Marcus Garvey, of Noble Drew Ali and the Moorish Science Temple, of the Nation of Islam, and of Malcolm X, especially in the last couple of years of his life. And so this Pan-Africanist, nationalist, Islamist school of thought has helped many hundreds of thousands of African Americans in this country start businesses, build their communities, when they come out of prison, to change their lives. And I wanted us to acknowledge that we are not a monolithic people, that there are many roads to the top of the mountain, and that we all can find the path that works best for us because our goal is similar.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, you've got something exciting coming up. Your festival does not just include film screenings. Talk to us a little bit about your decision to hold a gospel night tomorrow on Saturday at the Duke Ellington School of the Arts. And tell us why this is an important program for the theme that you have been using.
We wanted to create an evening that embodies pulpits, protest, and power. And so this event on Saturday night, tomorrow night, will feature 3 ministers who each will talk about a different aspect or era of the movement. The first, Delman Coates from Mount Enon, will speak about the leaders who were ministers as well as activists and organizers in the 50s and 60s. The second is a young woman in her 30s who is a minister, who is also an activist and a journalist. She will speak about contemporary activism, what's happening now, particularly the role of women. Women have always been in the background of the movement, but in the last few years they have stepped forward, notably in Black Lives Matter. And the third speaker is Reverend Stephen Green from Luke AME Church in Harlem. He will speak about the future of activists. He's in his 20s, and so he'll talk about what challenges we face and what new tools we can use to organize. Interspersed with those will be music and dance, and it will culminate in a set by the great Yolanda Adams. So we want to talk about this in the many ways we learn. We learn through singing, we learn through dance, we learn through speeches, we learn through art. We have so many ways of both expressing and interpreting information that we wanted this event to be a rousing synopsis of everything we've been talking about this week.
Okay, I understand now. Patrick Lundy's choir going to be singing with Yolanda Adams. Is that so?
They'll be performing. Dr. Lundy is our musical director for the evening, and the ministers of music will be performing, as well as the concert choir of the Duke Ellington School of the Arts. They are our partners this week. This week of
that's
activity.
All great music, Dr.
Yep.
Bay. I'm excited about everything I'm hearing. Well,
Good.
Why don't you give us your closing comments?
We would love for all of you who are listening to join us at any of our festival events. We will be taping some of them, and some of them are already virtual, so you can see them at www.mowff.org. That's the initials of March on Washington Film Festival. And be sure to come to Duke Ellington School. Go on the website, get a ticket. We have a pay what you can option, as well as ticket prices for the event at the Duke Ellington School of the Arts. So please come and participate. We would love to have you.
And say the website again so they can get tickets.
www.mowff.org. Those are the initials
F as in Frank.
Yes, it's the initials of March on Washington Film Festival, MOWFF.
Very good. All right. Well, I certainly have enjoyed hearing about this, and
thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it too.
I look forward to a good show. I don't know if I can make it, but I'm going to look at my calendar and see, because this is exciting, and I know it's kind of last minute for me, but I love Yolanda Adams. You know, my show, the sub-theme is Think on These Things, and she wrote a song called Think on These Things, and I really want her to be my guest one day. I need to go maybe just so you can introduce us, huh? Maybe I'll do that.
Thank you for having me.
You got to work and do what you got to do. All right.
Absolutely, sister.
Well, thank you for tuning in to the Lyndia Grant Show. That does it for our show this week. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you'll never miss an episode. Read my column in the Washington Informer newspaper, and give us a call at 240-602-6295. Thank you for tuning in. I hope that this show about the concert for the film festival has been helpful to you. And I hope that you enjoyed Miss Isa Sarah Bay. I'm also happy to invite you out every week to my home church, the All Nations Baptist Church, where I'm the chairman for Women's Day. And we're honoring what we call foot soldiers, women who get things done and they may not be famous. Our guest speaker is the Honorable Mayor Kashina Cross, the mayor of Glenarden, Maryland. Our pastor is Reverend Dr. James Coleman. We're located at number 2 Rhode Island Avenue, Northeast, Washington, D.C. It is our Women's Day coming up on October the 15th, 2023. I always close with this every week. Earl Nightingale once said, words, thoughts, and deeds have a boomerang effect. So be careful what you send out. We do become what we think about. And Scripture says, my people perish for the lack of knowledge. So think on these things. From the Lyndia Grant Show, I'm your host, Lyndia Grant. Until next week.
Thank you for listening to the Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things with your host, Lyndia Grant.